Hello. I'm going to make this video in response to the HLN show that I watched last night. Well, actually earlier in the morning. It was called Dr. Drew at Call. And this show features the Behavior Bureau that has Samantha Shocker, Dr. Drew, of course. And there's this lady called Wendy Walsh. And she's like a love expert. I think she wrote some books about relationships. I think she talks about sex too. But she is probably, based on my understanding, I think that she has a certain views on sexuality, and in particular, I believe porn. Now, Dr. Drew was talking about that guy Castro, that monster in Ohio that kidnapped these kids, and they're still kids somewhat, but he kidnapped these kids when they were teenagers, and he kept them for 10 years and sexually molested them, did a whole bunch of crazy stuff. Okay, he's in jail. He was in jail, but now I don't know if it happened a couple of days before the show or maybe just a couple of minutes. He is now dead. He is now dead. It seems like it's apparent suicide. And Wendy Walsh, I guess what happened was Wendy Walsh, they were talking about how the setup or the scenario of his death. It seemed like he hung himself. He had pictures of his family members. They think that it is some autoerotic fixation, or he killed himself in that way. Basically, some type of sexual pleasure, which ultimately led him to death. Just to put it shortly. But just to get to the cut to the chase, Wendy Walsh was talking about, was relating this to porn, or the movie that she saw Don Juan, and saying that porn somehow reduces men's ability to imagine. And I guess the reason why she related it to this is because somehow they were trying to say that Ariel Castro was not getting his sexual fix, and he had to use other means. And somehow it led to the Don Juan movie, where she made the claim that, porn, people that watch porn, or men who watch porn a lot, it eliminates their ability to imagine. And usually this type of argument is being made as an absolute statement by those who object to porn on moral grounds. I'm sure Dr. Drew would have this type of moral objection. Here's the problem. This is just made based on my experience. I watch porn, and I can have other fantasies that are not in porn. So that eliminates that type of argument. If you're going to go to the physicality part, where well, there's only a certain type of woman that's shown in porn, big boobs, or some stereotype Playboy model, and then men will imagine other women as beautiful. If you want to go that route, you have to actually watch porn to understand that that's not true. Okay. Now, perhaps that was true in the 1990s, where you had feature films where there was probably more restriction of a certain body type. But if you actually look at porn or watch it, instead of reading what porn is about, you would know that it's not true. So on both of those grounds, that's not a true statement. But this leads me to my second point, that the problem that when people make these moral objections, when people try to say that, people in porn are on drugs, people in porn are not smart, people are in porn going to have problems because they're not going to get married. When people make these type of arguments, many of the people that make these type of arguments are people who object to porn. And the reason why these arguments still are not convincing to me is because, all of the claims that they make, I can find the same claims to be made in other things. Okay, you can find consequences, severe consequences, in many things, and these many things are not reported, or these many things are not presented to. These many things are not discouraged. Like, for example, I like football, but football has a lot of consequences. NFL football has a lot of physical consequences. Okay, it's clear the head injuries. There's clear correlation between head injuries that exist as an effect of playing football for many years and retiring. It doesn't mean these things may not manifest when you're actually playing, but they compound. The problem exacerbates after you retire. Boxing, head injuries. On Muhammad Ali, we've seen that. That's clear. That's clearly a direct physical consequence. Okay. The problem that Wendy Walsh is going to have when you're dealing with somebody like myself is that you're making consequential arguments on things that you would have still a moral objection to, even if these consequences did not occur. So okay, let's say that porn does allow women and men to imagine more or have a greater imagination. If you still have a moral worldview that objects to porn based on how it objectifies in a certain context, you'll still have this moral objection. What I'm trying to say is that this is not a fundamental objection, and let me bring Dr. Drew into this. He hasn't really mentioned this, but I mean, like 5 years, every once in a while, Dr. Drew tries to make an implicit argument, or he doesn't try to come at it directly, but it's pretty clear. He tries to make an indirect argument against porn or any deviation from the monogamous, serious relationship mold. Okay. He believes that monogamy as a moral axiom is a no-brainer. It's an absolute transcendent moral axiom. However, when he tries to discourage other people from engaging in activities which he feels is quote unquote unhealthy, he may say immoral, but he says quote unquote unhealthy, he uses consequential arguments. For porn, he's not going to get the porn star that's not sexually abused. He's not going to get a porn star that's not had problems, trying to get back at their boyfriend. Well, he is going to get that porn star. He's not. He is going to get that. He's going to get that type of adult film star. I'm sorry. He's going to get that type of adult film star that has consequences. Is drugged up, or has started in porn and is now having problems because they can't date. Okay, those are the type of people he's going to get, and he's trying to deliver an implicit message that the negative consequences to be in this business makes porn a stupid choice. Therefore, it proves that porn is unhealthy, should not be promoted, and we should discourage it because of these reasons. However, my argument is that even if these consequences did not occur, he would still have a moral objection toward the industry, because his core objection is not because these people are drug addicts. Most porn women are sexually abused. Okay, that's not his core objection. Okay, his core objection is that he finds that it's not. He finds it a substantially inferior behavioral practice in terms of sanctifying the sacredness of sexuality. Okay, that's his core argument. So, knowing that it is core argument, when he continues to show these when he makes the argument of people having bad experiences in the industry, I can show the similar effects in Hollywood, and people have brought these arguments up. But I mean, in Hollywood, in the 1970s, rock and roll was infected with drugs. Okay, you were in rock and roll, you took heavy doses of drugs. And Dr. Drew probably listened to, I'm not sure, but I'm sure Dr. Drew does not make moral arguments saying that rock and roll is bad, or rock and roll, no, someone shouldn't be in the rock industry, because, in the 1970s, because of drugs. He would not make the same argument that people should not play football, or kids should not play football, or, people should not join the NFL because millions of men, not millions, but thousands of men who play football have, physical, have physical consequences occur in their bodies due to playing football. And it exacerbates often when they retire. He wouldn't make that argument because football is already seen as a noble idea. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not against football, but there's stronger arguments against football. That's my point, is that there's stronger ontological arguments against football than to make this transcendent argument against pornography or casual sexuality, all these other practices. There just simply is. But people get around this by saying, well, it provides more meaning. It's a trend, it symbolizes something more meaningful. It symbolizes teamwork. It has this transcendental, it can express these transcendental ideas of overcoming adversity and teamwork. So therefore, it doesn't matter. So they try to use the more meaningful argument, the more it has more meaning argument. That still doesn't get you out of jail, okay? Because I can easily make the argument that you can find other things that can offer the same type of principles and eliminate absolutely those physical injuries. Now, I don't want to get into football. I'm not making an argument against football. I'm just trying to say that the arguments towards consuming and watching football, watching UFC, okay, if someone made those arguments, they would be substantially stronger than what Wendy Walsh is making against pornography. And a lot of the consequences are far more general and can be proven to be far more general. Okay, that is the argument that I'm trying to make. And just because you can, even if you can say without a doubt that football manifests, the culture of football indirectly manifests, the culture of UFC indirectly manifests ideals of overcoming adversity, the ideals of working hard, the ideals of success, and those are so overpowering that it outweighs the physical injuries. You still have a big, severe problem. The problem is that the negative consequences still exist. Okay, number one. Number two, there are other ways, there are other sports or other sports that are not as violent that can manifest the same, can promote the same ideals of sportsmanship, overcoming adversity and hard work and success. So you still are not out of the woods. Okay. Now, getting back to this argument, this porn argument. The bottom line is that Wendy Walsh has to come up more with one example of some guy in this Don John or John Juan movie, okay, somehow losing their imagination or sexual fantasies, or this type of porn is. It's not the porn itself, it's just probably his personality transforming this guy not to have relationships, or this porn is affecting their personal relationships. Because I can find sex experts that will say that porn increased their imagination, spiced up their sex life. Okay. On the other side, and they can come up with with scenarios that show completely diametric results. Okay, but these same arguments about porn can be made in terms of video games. That video games, people are watching video games. Yeah, you could say they could destroy their imagination. People that are watching video games, they're less likely to read, and they're less likely to imagine things outside of a certain construct, because video games have a certain pattern that they promote. Okay, so the kids that watch video games, they can't imagine, they can't read books because they don't allow themselves to imagine outside of the construct of video games, or even movies. I mean, the people have made the same argument about movies. Why books are better than movies, because movies show science fiction or stories within a certain construct, in a certain pattern, and that if you continue to see certain general themes in movies, you won't be able to imagine outside of that box. And that's the same thing you could probably say about porn. And I mean, that's true, but that's true with any other medium. And my question is why is this medium continued to be looked on while these other mediums are not? And it's clearly the moral objection. Generally speaking, the moral objection. I'm sure there's generally people that would say relatively there's certain men certain women who, S&M or porn would, based on their personality, it negatively hampers their relationship in a sexual fashion. Sure, you can relatively say that, but from my understanding, what Wendy Walsh, how she was promoting it as, she was promoting it as the nail in the coffin toward porn being a healthy medium. Like this guy here, the story of John Juan, this just shows how men, guys who watch a lot of porn, and a lot of porn could be anything, could be excessive porn is like relative, but let's say a poor guy that watches porn every single day, this is how he is, and this is the reason why he watches it, and this is how he's going to react toward women. This John Juan. This is what he's thinking. Okay. In a relative way, you may be able to make these kinds of claims, but when you're making global claims like this, you need to have strong evidence. John Juan is not even close to being strong evidence. So that's my point. So I don't know if you guys watched it. You guys probably might want to comment on it, but I think things like from the Behavior Bureau and a lot of these other shows. I mean, next time, like things when they comment about Miley Cyrus and other current events, I'm going to start trying to react to these things promptly, because a lot of my belief systems are related to some of these shows. So I hope you liked the video. I know it's a little bit long, but I just wanted to get it out there. All right. Thanks a lot. Bye.